The nation continues to debate gun laws in the wake of the Las Vegas mass shooting, in particular a potential ban on bump stocks, legal accessories for semi-automatic rifles, which the Las Vegas gunmen use. They allow a shooter to fire bullets more rapidly. Now, a gun show scheduled for this weekend in Las Vegas was canceled in the wake of last weekend's killings, but about a 7 hours drive northwest of Vegas, a gun show in Reno, Nevada is going on as planned. And we had a chance to speak with our Dan Simon, who's on scene there last hour. He tells us that people are coming quickly and trying to gather up more and buy up those bump stocks there. Again, 58 people were killed in the Las Vegas attack and nearly 500 others were injured. It can be hard to wrap your head around numbers like these. But last hour, one of our guests was able to put this shooting into perspective and explain exactly what this killer was able to accomplish. And it is terrifying. He is former FBI supervisory special agent James Galliano.
Think about this. Anna, in 10 minutes, this subject was able to kill 58 people and wound 500. That is roughly the equivalent of an American military battalion. In the bloodiest battle in Iraq, in the Iraq conflict in 2004, spanned November and December of 2004, the Battle of Fallujah, 82 men killed, 600 wounded. Let that sink in just for a second, that in 10 minutes, this man was able to kill and maim almost the equivalent of the casualty loss in the Battle of Fallujah.
Now, one of the reasons this killer was able to shoot so many people in such a short amount of time is because he had those bump fire stocks. Again, perfectly legal, but that could change. I'm joined now by Republican Congressman Trent Franks of Arizona. Congressman, House Speaker Paul Ryan seemed to be open to a ban on bump fire stocks. Would you support legislation banning that kind of accessory?
Well, I haven't talked to Paul about that at all. I haven't heard anything that he has said. I guess it's important to keep in mind that a machine gun, a fully automatic machine gun that he used was already illegal. And I suppose any number of different ways can be utilized to turn a semi-automatic into an automatic. I personally know that that is the case. And so to write any type of legislation would probably have to be along the lines of turning any legal gun into an illegal gun. I mean, we have
I'm
a lot of
little confused. I'm sorry. Forgive me, Congressman, for interrupting, because that's the first I've heard of him using a weapon that was not legal. Do you have additional information that you can share about that?
Oh, yes. A fully automatic machine gun that he was using is an illegal weapon.
My understanding is he did not, based on the information that I've had a chance to look at from investigators, is that he purchased all of his weapons legally and that he used these bump fire stocks that were allowing him to essentially simulate an automatic weapon by attaching it to this gun. I'm not a gun expert, so I won't pretend to be, but as we're learning about these bump fire stocks, which I know a lot of hunters and gun enthusiasts are also unfamiliar with, as Paul Ryan pointed out, and I know he is one of those outdoorsmen, hunter enthusiasts. That's why they have become center of this gun control debate. A lot of people say they allow guns to mimic automatic weapons.
Well, sometimes it's hard to draw the line very sharply here, but a fully automatic machine gun is legal only with special permits, so it would be illegal for him to have that. And if he had some sort of ways, whether it's the bump stock or whether it's filing off the recocking mechanism in a semi-automatic, to turn that into a machine gun or a fully automatic would, in my judgment, put the gun into an illegal category. Now, if I'm wrong on that, I'll certainly express that. But the fully automatic machine gun without a permit is illegal now. And the report that you had about Fallujah, the gentleman mentioned that this monster killed these innocent people at a greater rate than the people who died at Fallujah. It is important to keep in mind that at Fallujah there were people that were shooting back both ways, and so there was a protection for the innocent there, or even for the guilty, as it were. I mean, they had their own protection with their own firepower, and in this case, this guy was the only one who had a gun, only one who had a number of guns, and he was in a very difficult spot to reach, and so he was just completely unstoppable. And ultimately, there are always going to be these damnable lunatics that gain that kind of advantage, and we have to be able to protect ourselves in this country. And ultimately, we have to look to what the real cause was. I know it's a hard thing to divine. I don't have the answer on that, but we have to look at the cause, because guns in the hands of the police and other rational people save lives every day in this country. So it's not the guns, it's whose hands they're in. In this case, they were in the hands of an evil monster.
Congressman, am I hearing you say you believe if people in that crowd had more guns that they could have ended his shooting spree sooner and prevented some of the deaths?
Maybe if the security guard in the hotel that was supposed to just be a few rooms away or something had been able to face him head on, like the lady in the Colorado church shooting did, that she was off-duty police officer, stopped the gunman before he was ever able to do the horrible things that he was doing. Sooner or later, when you find monsters like this that have weapons of almost any kind, and sooner or later they'll transfer whatever weapons we outlaw sometimes, they'll get something else. We have to be able to have the ability to defend ourselves.
Congressman, as far as we know, it was a security guard in the hotel that did stop this gunman, and not because he confronted him with gunfire, but he was able to interrupt the attack because he came walking down the hallway of the 32nd floor, according to investigators. We just learned this in the last 24 hours. He was responding to a door alarm, a door that was ajar down the hallway. Right. It wasn't the gunman's door, the gunman's hotel room that had set off this alarm. But when he came walking down that hallway, that interrupted the attack for the gunman. The gunman then turned his fire on that security guard, but he stopped firing on the crowd below. That was the end of the firing down below. So it was indeed a security guard that stopped this, but all the experts we've talked to have said that this is a situation in which it would have been impossible for anybody in the crowd to return fire to stop this gunman,
I agree
given
with
the
that.
circumstance.
No, I don't suggest the people in the crowd could have shot up at the hotel. I don't think many of them even knew where it was coming from. But I think the scenario that you just laid out is sort of my point. If there had been people that were in charge of security in the hotel, had been better armed and been able to help this gentleman that interrupted it in the first place, it might have saved lives. I don't know. I know that there are no perfect answers, but I am convinced of this much, that if we're going to deal with these challenges, we have to deal with the cause, because, you know, terrorists have now gone to using vehicles. And just as you can turn a semi-automatic into a simulated automatic with a bump stock, you can turn a family car into a car bomb with a sufficient amount of ammonium nitrate. So the bottom line is we have to get to the mindset, to this evil justification for murdering the innocent. And I would suggest to you that at the very heart of this, in the final analysis, is that somehow a disrespect or lack of respect for innocent human life has become more and more prevalent in our society. And if we don't arrest that, I think that we've just seen the tip of the iceberg of the tragedies that could come.
I know that you, as we all do, want to try to prevent something like this from happening again.
Oh,
and let me just show you.
Do.
Let me show you the latest poll from Quinnipiac on gun control. Finds that 94% of Americans think there should be universal background checks for gun purchases. That includes 93% of Republicans, voters in your party. Why isn't there bipartisan support in Congress for something that Americans are nearly unanimous about?
Well, I think that over the historical perspective, if you look whether it was in China or Germany or wherever it might have been, there's ample evidence that whenever governments began to get too able to take civilians, innocent civilians that were law-abiding civilians, when they were able to disarm them, terrible things followed. Thousands, tens of thousands of people died as a result of that. You know, if the laws in Germany hadn't been changed and some of the people hadn't been deprived of their ability to defend themselves, Crystal Night would have turned out a very different way. And so it's hard to somehow know the right answer, but I am convinced this much, that the Second Amendment and people's ability to own their own firearms that are law-abiding citizens saves lives, not takes them. And there are those circumstances where some monster that doesn't care about law or life does these terrible things, and it's our job, I believe, as a society, to try to ascertain what the cause of that is and to address it directly.
Congressman, when you say more guns save lives, not take lives, I just have to ask, it seems like these shootings are getting worse, not better. What evidence do you have that more guns are making things better, that are saving lives versus people losing lives?
Well, I guess I would leave it to CNN to check out on some statistics, but I think it was about 10 or 12 years ago we had some statistics, and that has changed, I'm sure, but that about 2.5 times as many people in America were successfully defending their own lives for every one person that was shot by a firearm of any kind, including those that were shot in the line of duty by a police officer. That's a very telling thing, and I'd be interested to see what that scenario is today. But I am convinced, as I've said, that the guns that are in the hands of law-abiding citizens save lives, and they are able to give us some ability to defend ourselves. Like, Steve Scalise is probably the perfect example. I don't want to put everything on him, but he was shot, and yet he strongly rejects gun control because he realizes that if his guards there hadn't had that ability to defend themselves and to defend him, maybe a dozen members of Congress would have died. And so the challenge is for us sometimes is to look past the emotional reaction that I have, and I know you do, and it's right to care about our fellow citizens. This is the most horrible thing that we can see is when innocent people are deprived of life. That is the foundation of America, is that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And he did that. And so we want to find out what actually has caused it and not go after the tools of his terror, but go after the cause of what made him pull the trigger and murder all these innocent people.
Congressman, real quick, I want to ask you about a bill I know you are co-sponsoring. We've talked a lot about health care as well this week. There were some new maneuverings by the administration to essentially allow organizations to remove the contraceptive mandate, essentially, from the Obamacare legislation. And there's also been additional healthcare conversations as early as, or as late as today, in fact, with the president tweeting about having a conversation with Chuck Schumer. You have a bill that passed the House preventing late-term abortions. Do you think it can pass in the Senate?
Well, I think if it gets a fair vote, it passes easily. And I was extremely grateful to President Trump for having a statement of administrative policy on this bill. I think that's the first one that's ever been put out. I think that is one of the reasons why he is president, because there was such a distinction between his policy on protecting unborn life and Mrs. Clinton's. In the debates, when that came up, she literally defended abortion into the latest possible time. And he said, that's not okay with me. And I think that it made the difference. And today, I think he's president because of his commitment to protect the most innocent in our society. This bill is a bill that simply protects pain-capable unborn children at the beginning, starting at the beginning of the 6th month through the remainder of the pregnancy. Now, that's something overwhelmingly supported. And I would just suggest to you, as we were just talking about the respect for innocent human life, sometimes I wonder if our focus is not on really protecting innocent human life. If it were, maybe there wouldn't be some of these other horrible things. I mean, we had just yesterday 3,000 unborn children die in America, 3,000. And some of those were very late-term abortions that most Americans are against. They want to protect these late-term pain-capable babies. And I just am convinced of this much, that regardless of whether it's some evil monster shooting people from a hotel window, or if it's some Planned Parenthood abortionist making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year killing innocent children, or if it's terrorists mowing people down in a crowd with trucks, or if it's some racist monster doing the same thing in a car, it all comes down to one basic foundational premise, and that is we as a society, as a human society and human family, have to promote the protection of innocent life to the ultimate degree, or otherwise the failure to do so manifests in some terrible, dark, evil ways.
Congressman Trent Franks, thank you for your time. You're welcome back anytime.
And thank you, Anna, very much. Great interview, my lady. Thank you.
Thank you. President Trump